It's Peter Mead, and welcome to the Australian Search Marketing Professionals. That will be the Australian Search Marketing Academy, where I have a lot of search marketing professionals here, the best in the world. And here we're live. We're live across Australia, across UK, and around the world. And well, it's that time of year again, SEO Predictions for 2020. This is the Australian version. And so thanks very much to Semrush for allowing us this platform. But here's the episode where we talk about, did 2019 predictions come true? What kind of Google roller coaster ride will we see in 2020? And so to help me answer these questions, I have three amazing search marketing professionals: Ric Rodriguez, Dan Petrovic, and Nick Ranger. And I will go through and introduce these guests. And so Ric Rodriguez joining us from UK. It's early in the morning. He's SEO consultant at Yext. He's a NYSE listed search company. Ric has worked agency side for the past 6 years with brands including L'Oreal, Regis, Sanditon Bank, and others. He's a frequent conference speaker and a writer. And so, yeah, how's the UK this morning, Ric? Thanks for joining us. I'm sure it's early there.
Yeah, hey everyone, great to be here. It's a little bit early. You can still see it's a bit dark behind me. It will gradually get lighter as the webinar continues. But yeah, it's great to be here. Great to be involved with Australia and what's going on in Australia.
This is great. I'm really interested to hear the predictions you've got in mind and to talk about search and just the differences between perhaps something we can notice between the UK and Australia.
Sure, yeah, very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. So I'll go on and introduce Dan Petrovic, Managing Director of DEJAN Marketing and a futurist at heart who loves to predict future events. Dan is also known for his SEO experiments and many years of speaking at various industry events around the globe. So some of Dan's interests include a focus in 2020. So he's focusing on SERP optimization, CTR optimization, web content, link building, and creative SEO. Welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Love to be here with you, as always.
Great. And be very interested to hear a few of these things that you're talking about during the webinar. How creative do we need to get and this kind of a thing, right?
Very.
Okay. That will get us going later on. Nick Ranger.
Hello.
How are you? Nick Ranger is an SEO specialist at Studio Hawk, overseeing SEO strategy for large enterprises and local business. So Nick's interested in site structure, SERP watching, structured data, and illustration. And
just to throw an extra one in there.
So how are you? How are you? How's Melbourne?
Melbourne is great. We're actually in a room adjacent to each other, and I can just hear you through the wall right here. But I'm really, really excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Semrush. Thank you for having me, Peter. It's great to be here with such a phenomenal panel. And 2019 has been an absolute roller coaster, and I'm really looking forward to what's happening in 2020.
Wow. Yes, we are in the same building. We're in the Studio Hawk studio in different rooms.
Correct.
But yeah, so it's actually quite warm here in Melbourne at the moment. So let's not keep our guests. I can see lots of people joining on to the webinar. Let's not keep our audience waiting. Let's start. I'm going to start the first question, and I'm going to ask you first of all, Ric, if I can.
Of course.
Can I ask you, so far as 2019 predictions, at the beginning of this year, you may have had some certain ideas in mind of what the year ahead people were talking, rumors, predictions, that kind of a thing. Do you think much of this came true? What kind of things were accurate and what were not accurate?
Yeah, I believe that search has headed in the direction I thought it would. So I wrote a piece for The Drum in sort of tail end of 2018 talking about why Google needs to have the answers. And it focused on the changing search landscape, Google's movement from keyword-focused search to longer strings to questions and answers and direct answers in search. And all we've seen really in 2019 is that Google has moved further and further and further forward with that agenda in pushing more direct information search results, pushing people away from websites in some instances. And I'm sure it'll be something we talk a lot about in sort of the rest of this webinar, but moving to this knowledge-based future.
So, yes, of course, we have seen that trend, haven't we? Moving away from keywords, right?
Yeah.
I won't say too much more than that because I want to hear what Dan has to say about this. Dan, is this what you thought would happen in 2019, moving away from the old ways of SEO, optimizing for keywords?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not about keywords. There's just a lot more new, weird keywords that we haven't considered before. Like a lot of the changes that took place didn't affect SEO specifically or how SEO is done. It affected how Google presents new information to people who are searching for random things in different ways. So they found new ways to connect potential information with the person searching for it that we haven't considered before, to the point where I find Google useless in certain instances, and I go to Bing to find the results that I want when I want a very specific answer to my query. Exact match queries are almost useless at the moment because Google tries to hone you in on a certain direction that it thinks you want to go into, and if that direction is wrong, it's just you need to completely rephrase your query. So a lot of weird things are going with Google at the moment, particularly because they'll let the algorithm decide a lot more. And I think what I've seen in Algorithm over the year is it's something that I refer to as Google Lite. I don't think Google's results are as robust, as accurate as before, but they're just a lot more diverse and a lot more random. And something tells me that they're using a lot less resources than before. I think they've optimized their systems to make a lot more guesswork than actual results, and I think that they're saving a lot of money that way.
And they're getting a lot of repeat searches, right? I mean, the more searches you do, the more you're using Google, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing that really wasn't a surprise for me, and I predicted it, is that Google wants you to stay at Google. They don't want you to click anywhere. So the zero click results of the zero click searches, and something that I wrote about a couple of months ago that Google refers to as the good abandonment. User goes on the page,
according to GDAC,
and Google's just responding to my query. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
It's
Google
it's
knows.
creepy. So
yeah,
basically we're facing the zero click and good abandonment era that's going to just, I think, become more prominent in the next year.
Okay. Yeah, this is really interesting. Nick, can I bring you in now, because this is seriously becoming a trend that is quite obvious, is the zero click SERPs, right? The results that we're seeing, we don't need to click on it. It's just there for us. And, also this combination of zero click results, but also, the kind of, we do a search, the kind of result we get, it just forces us to search again. Is this a good thing? Is it good for Google? Is it good for us as SEO people? But what about, is it good for, the general public doing their searching? What is your take on all this, Nick? I'll hand it over to you for a few minutes.
I kind of feel like ultimately Google really wants to be able to serve users a lot better, and they're making a lot of improvements that they're hoping that with the long game that this is going to all kind of like even itself out. But I do agree with Dan. I find that a lot of broad match keywords, a lot of people aren't finding their intent as well as that they might have had. So like they're having to go back and refine a lot of their searches. But I definitely have seen a lot of more like, I don't know, like things happening in the SERP where the position 0 is has definitely increased. And I know that a lot of people towards the start of this year was like, yeah, this is definitely going to be something that we're going to have to look out for. And you know, Rand Fishkin did some really, really interesting research on SparkToro specifically about that, where like for zero-click searches, like there was a massive increase in impressions and things like that through Search Console, because Google's just kind of like eating up in the SERP. And also Kevin Indig has been so fantastic on Twitter documenting like Google literally showing like, hey, we're going to do like calculators. We're going to basically serve that to users. So, you know, why would you even go and click through to them? So a lot of the time, I think a myth that I'd like to also maybe even bring up right now is that that, you know, position 0 is good for brands. It's like for, you know, to be able to be seen, but a lot of the time you might see a link, but a lot of the time you will get a lot of impression increases, but not a lot of CTR in like when you look at like the overall. I know in some instances people like definitely see position 0 working for them, but I think the general chatter is like overall that hasn't really helped a lot of businesses and a lot of brands. So yeah, again, the long term, I think they're trying really, really hard to make a lot of amendments.
Of course, yeah, as SEOs, it's a bit hard for us to accept this, but
and our clients, what's going on?
But look, let's just maybe change tact a bit here. I'll throw this question over to Ric. I want to start talking about some of the penalties. I mean, this year in 2019, you know, we've seen a lot of penalties. Well, when I say penalties, I mean, we've seen algorithm updates, and some people suffered and some people benefited from that. But in general, the people who got hit considered themselves to be penalized, right? And some of them couldn't really work out what they did wrong. Some of the communication from the official channels was quite bit blurry too, as to, well, you didn't do anything wrong, you just lost from the algorithm update. What do you think, Ric? Were they hard hitting? Was it unfair? Should we see more of this next year? What's your thoughts, Ric?
Yeah, so actually just to sort of touch on the previous conversation, it's quite interesting what Dan said around the results and the quality of the results. That's not something I would say we see so much of in the UK. I would say that generally the results that we get in the UK are pretty good, are pretty accurate. When you look for it, you do find what you want. And I think there is a lot of guessing that's going on around intent. And to your point, Dan, around how, you know, Google is relying algorithmically on things as opposed to giving a broader set of results. But I would say that they're far better at matching where we are perhaps than perhaps where you guys are, because I don't think query matching is so much of an issue here. And perhaps lots of people disagree with me, but it's not something that we've sort of seen as an issue. But so I just wanted to double click on that for 2 seconds. But to the point around penalties. So I'm a firm believer that Google's system is, well, ultimately an algorithm is just a set of instructions that facilitates actions, right? It's the instructions for the machine learning models to continuously learn and to learn by. So in that regard, sure, there have been lots of core updates, as Google term them, and core updates, as you quite rightly say, are pretty. There's very little information around them. Google doesn't say, hey, we focused on this one thing, and this is what you need to do to start killing it now. it is broad, but I think that's purely because there are so many factors and so many things going on with ranking that actually all they're doing is changing a criteria or releasing a new model into the wild that they've been testing on the side that is getting better quality results than the one before. So as far as does this surprise me? No, I think this has been how it's worked for quite some time. Do I expect to see more of it next year? Yes, I think we'll see a lot more of this next year. But I think just like Penguin became completely real time, just like Panda became real time, I think these kind of core updates will be more ongoing rather than as sort of jittery as they have been.
Oh, thanks for your insight, and also thanks for sharing your contrast from the UK experience. And yeah, it's quite interesting there. Dan, what do you think about the algorithms? Obviously, you know, a lot of SEOs, they optimize for the algorithm, right? Which I'm not a fan of that myself. But every now and again, even if we're doing all the right things, sometimes you can lose on the when an algorithm update is done. What's your take on that, Dan? Do we need to just stop thinking about algorithms, or what do we do?
Well, I don't think we should completely ignore when something changes at Google. It's our duty towards our clients to be on top of it, and that's why I created our algorithm, because it started off as an internal set of metrics that we use, and we thought, well, let's make it public to give the Australian side of what's going on rather than just having Moscast and the others. So when something happens with one of my clients, the first question I ask myself, is it something that we did or the client did, or is it something that's global, a global event? And so that's an example when it's useful to chase algorithms. We're not actually chasing them. We just want to make sure that it's not, that we can say, okay, it's a global event, something happened on an algorithmic level, and it's not much you can do about that. It's not like you're going to know what to do. Oh, you know, BERT came out, so this is, you know, I was a little bit skeptical when all these BERT optimization articles came out from people who are not outsiders to Google. In fact, there's nothing to optimize. It's just BERT is a better way to and faster way to process natural language and understand things. It's just bidirectional understanding of the sentences. It's more effective. There's nothing to optimize there. So, but what I do see is, so tick, that's useful to know when there's a global update, and that's all you need to know, really. And if there isn't something that's showing up on trackers, then you go and have a look at your on-site stuff, and you know, to see if you've messed up something. So that's one thing where it's useful. But there's a lot of chatter, and you know, like Search Engine Land and all the other blogs. People are saying, oh, there's an algorithm update and some announcements by Google. But what you'll often see is that there are updates that fly under the radar, and we can see them quite spiking up. And I go, oh, okay, something happened. And so it's not just when the announcements happen. You should be looking at the trackers and going, something happened there. I should check my clients' rankings. In terms of the jargon of penalties, not even Google uses that term. They say manual actions, and they say algorithmic changes. So mostly what happens is algo update. Some people win, some people lose. But one surprise from this year was that Google still issues manual penalties for arbitrary stuff. Don't get me started on that. I have a lot to say. Maybe at a later time.
Well, maybe I'll ask you about your experience, but not right this minute, but a little bit later in the webinar, I'll ask you some specific questions about that, Dan. But I do want to hear Nick's take on some of these algorithm updates, which seem to be a lot to do with the same kind of things they always have been, but maybe tougher on the links and maybe tougher on the EAT sort of stuff that I've seen the trends of. What's your experience, Nick? Have you seen anything like that? Do you think they'll just keep going in the same direction for 2020?
Yeah, well, we saw a lot of volatility in the SERPs and with rankings and with organic traffic with a lot of our clients. With the June 2019 core updates, like we saw that new sites, of course, like if they were had like low quality signals attributed to them, that they had a massive drop in their rankings and organic traffic, as well as that, like a lot of sites with reciprocal link schemes, especially around about September, they had a lot of issues, and so there's a lot of digging and scratching into like the backlink profiles of those, just to sort of weed it out and try and figure out what was going on. But I think quite honestly, like machine learning is having a massive impact in the SERP, and if you really want to make sure that you're going to be fine for 2020, I really think that all the traditional factors like EAT, the expertise, authority, and trustworthiness, but also quality, let's not forget quality, is definitely something that we should really definitely make sure that we're fastidiously adding to the logic of why we do things when we're looking to optimize our sites for 2020. Because I think to be able to get machine learning like on your side, I think a lot more is going after that, particularly with so much with BERT and NLU, really wanting to make sure that queries and things like that will be much better understood. So yeah, I think that's really something that we should really take away. I don't think it's going to be working much longer. I think there's going to be a lot more scrutiny on black hat, grey hat kind of techniques.
Yes, we've heard that black hat is days are numbered. We've heard that for quite a while now. And yeah, if someone could place a bet on when that will come to an end,
I don't know about placing bets, but I really think that they've kind of painted them, like Google has painted themselves a little bit into a little bit of a corner. I remember Ross Tavendale was just talking about this, with they're still very much looking at the link graph, and when the last what was it? The Bedlam update happened. I know that's not what they call it, but Twitter, everyone calls it something. Florida Bedlam. But when that happened, of course that affected a lot of local searches, and some of the first things that I like to look at is for emergency services. So I immediately went to emergency electrician, and there lo and behold, in the map pack is a site that's ranking #1 that is a one-page website with about 115 words on it. It had 84 million backlinks pointing to it, and I'm just thinking this is insane. And this was a global update as well, so I kind of asked around is anyone else seeing that? And I think another guy from Portugal was also tweeted back at me and was I've seen exactly the same thing. That corrected itself quite quickly, but I think that really does expose that they have a problem with how they see the link graph, and there's a lot of stuff where they're trying to refine that a lot better, and tell everyone, and say we're focusing on the AT, we're wanting to really make sure the quality is going after. But I think when those kinds of things are exposed, I think links are just as important as ever. But I think the way that they are, the way that the relationships and things like that are managed, try and do that with the best of your ability.
That's a pretty in-depth answer. Thanks for that, Nick. And I just wonder, I've got a question for you, Rick, but I just didn't. Do you have any more comments about the algorithms before we move on to the next topic?
I mean, to touch on what Nick was saying around links, I've gone backwards and forwards to whether I think links are important, they're not important, are they important? And I regardless of how, so I've tried to disprove the value of links multiple times purely because I want to understand a bit more about what the influence they have is. And every time I've done this, I've hit a bit of a dead end purely because links are ultimately the lifeblood of the internet. They are what connects documents together. And if you look back all the way back to the original PageRank algorithm, ultimately all that PageRank was a set of connections between it was ultimately the probability of whether you were going to continue a search onto another page or whether you were going to start your search again in the results, and turning that into some sort of score that they can use to curate results. And so actually I do think links will be important, whether links continue to be important in the traditional ways, whether there's things that we can learn from them, additional context factors, and contextual kind of relevancy signals we can get from that, all to be seen. I think there is, but I completely believe that links will continue to be important.
Yeah. If I can, just add one more thing to that. I think with the no follow, the no follow anchors, like been attributed. Again, like, that's why I think Google really wanted to go out and say, like, hey, can you please define these ways to mark up these links a lot more fastidiously, like with sponsored and user-generated content, because they're not directives anymore. We're going to treat them as hints, and we're going to know what's happening. We're going to be all over it, and we can see everything, but as unfortunately, Dan knows all too well, and I'm sure you'll touch on that soon. But that's just not the case, and I don't think we should, take that at face value. I think we should be just as scrutinizing as ever.
But I'm sorry, Pete.
No, you go ahead, please, Rick.
I was going to say the change with the different tagging around links. To me, it very much seems like they need better quality data. So if we start tagging things as sponsored or as UGC and start giving them more context to the links that exist, they can feed that into their systems, their algorithms, and the machine learning processes to actually better classify links that they discover in the wild that maybe haven't been tagged as X, Y, or Z. And it is very much about getting tagged examples for their systems to learn from.
It reminds you what they did with authorship, doesn't it?
Yeah. Though I had a site where I marked up authorship and I didn't see too much of a difference. It was a huge pain, but yeah.
They just used it for a while to train their algorithms, and then they pulled it out, and that's it. That's what's happening, I think, with the additional link signals. So.
I like. I'll just add my little 2 cents worth in here, since I'm the moderator. I can say a few things too.
Of course.
And, I'm a fan of Tim Berners-Lee because I have been around long enough to remember when the internet was a project, and the internet was founded on links. The websites had links, and so yes, I don't think they're going to go away. Obviously, they won't go away, but in terms of rankings, will they be, nuanced? Absolutely, they will be nuanced, I believe, anyway. Maybe, Dan, I'll bring you into this next question because we've had one. It's profitability. Virtual assistants asked, what is the best way to set our website up for the result for zero search? And I will, zero, people want position zero, right? But I'm going to mix this up a little bit with the other topic here, which is we've been thinking about, which is the zero click result. Is this right? Does position zero also kind of double as a zero click?
Well, I've actually studied SERPs quite intensively in the last 5 years, and I have a very good idea what's been happening and how it's been evolving. I did talks about SERPs and CTR optimization, and it's still a great interest of mine. couple of things that are very interesting at the moment is that position number 1 and position number 0, the featured snippets, it's not necessarily a major traffic driver. There's increasing evidence and some of my own research that supports this, as well as Nielsen's research, that tells us that people's eyes dart around the SERP page very randomly these days. So Nielsen refers to it as a pinball effect, and Google in their own research talks about it as nonlinear search pattern behavior. What does nonlinear mean? Well, in the traditional sense, you had the top 10 results, and then you go number 1, number 2, number 3, and it's the 10 blue links, and the good old days. So what was nice about that is that you can easily predict the likelihood of each result being clicked on based on its position bias. It's just statistical stuff. So that helped Google normalize their results when they evaluate the popularity of each of the 10 results on the page. And for Google, this is important as a user behavior signal to evaluate, is a very significant metric to evaluate the quality of their results. So for example, if a significant amount of people clicks on 5th result, once you iron out all the bias when you compare to the results 1 through to 4, that result suddenly becomes very interesting to Google. And that's how they analyze what's interesting. So I think webmasters now have an opportunity, regardless of whether you're the result 0 or if you're facing a query that provides 0 clicks, you face an opportunity now to create the clicks if they weren't going to happen through very tricky, interesting, clever, it's like writing ad copy. People put so much time and effort in Google Ads, fine crafting the titles and descriptions and the ad copy and just A/B testing. Almost nobody does it on SERPs, on the organic side. Why? I don't know, because it's free, I guess, but it's not free because we invest so much money into it. So A/B testing or sequential testing of SERPs, regardless of where they are, and using, it's a whole new topic. I'm not going to take too much time, but it's a topic of using power words and little hooks and little catchphrases to lure people in. And some of those are counterintuitive. A lot of my own research shows that if you give an answer in your meta description and provide a reason for in-depth, so you give the answer and you say why, click through to find out more detail, or you provide value, you're actually more likely to get the click. So by providing an answer, you're not losing the audience. You're luring them in. It's a fascinating subject.
Nice. Read more. ... No.
It depends. It needs to be tested all the time, and this involves a schema for the FAQs, for example. When you get those little accordions, you would think, like, if you provide your answers in there, people are just going to have a good experience on Google and leave, satisfied that they got their answers. It's our responsibility as SEOs to provide that hook to attract the click-through. That's what's happening now. That's 2020 challenge. How do you make your stuff clickable? Because what's happening with the 0-click searches, it's all like free marketing for us. Even if people don't click through, they're seeing our brand. But we have a huge opportunity to cause the clicks to happen. If the click doesn't happen, we didn't do our job.
I just want to jump in here on that as well, because I think there's an important bit that we often overlook, which I completely agree that, we want clicks to come to our website. We need people to stay and to convert. But actually, if people are asking a question in the search results and you as a brand are not providing the answer, the customers can't find that information, actually, they're not going to blame Google that they can't find the information. They're going to blame you as a brand for not putting it there. And people are being retrained to look for information in different ways, in more complicated ways. Voice has done a lot on that. And so people will expect to see this information in search results. I think we're going to see this more and more in 2020. So I completely agree about getting the clicks. And I think trying to drive clicks however you can to your site is important. But I also think that if you're not focusing on how you're getting your information into Google's graph, into the knowledge base that it sits upon, and you're not answering those questions, and 2 things: 1, your users aren't going to get that information. 2, someone else probably will instead.
Yeah. If I'd like to just add one more thing there as well. I think like whenever you see position 0, you guys might have also noticed this as well, but they're getting a lot shorter and a lot more qualified. So I also just think that they're doing a lot better at understanding like the user's query and actually like delivering a little bit featured like answer there, and that's definitely something that I've seen. But also too, like, you know, if you get a featured snippet on mobile, for instance, that might not also, you know, translate when you go and sit back at your desk and, you know, or, you know, on your desktop computer. So it's just different things. But I think a lot of the time, like if you're applying like structured data to your content and you're really trying to make it really quite user friendly and easy to understand, a lot of what BERT seems to be pulling from and being affected for, I think, like 10% of all web queries, is that a lot of this information is being pulled from Wikipedia. So Wikipedia does a really good job of being able to organize all their information in a way that's, you know, you've got like the full context of everything. And there was, I don't know, I'm not saying like emulate Wikipedia, but they definitely do a good job of answering a lot of user queries.
Yes. Okay. Shall we keep on to the next? Look, I've got a very quick question while we've got you there, Nick. And it's a short question, but it actually is maybe a little bit of a scary one for SEO people who make their money out of selling SEO. So Martin Victor says, is SEO going to be automated?
Well, like I was saying before, machine learning is definitely something that is impacting the steps a lot more. BERT, just the framework of BERT is actually open source. So there's a lot of people that are going into that and trying to understand like how Google has organized their, I'll try and remember the full snippet, bi-directional encoder representations from transformers. So, you know, like if you were to automate that, I don't know whether it'd even be worth your time to look at that and do that. I know that Facebook has done that with Roberta. They've been able to like qualify basically BERT even further to be able to understand a lot of user queries and things like that. You know, if you I don't know. There's a lot of people who are, you know, also saying like, you know, should you know Python? And there's like, you know, mixed opinions about that. I myself personally don't know Python, though it's like an enormously interesting field of script to get into and to see the potential of what it can do. But for the most part, I think when it boils down to it, like grit, logic, and perseverance in trying to do that quite well is going to be your best tools for the future.
Okay. Can I follow that on a little bit to you, Ric? I noticed you had some comments to say when BERT went out to 70 different languages just recently. Did you have something more you wanted to say? I mean, is this what we're going to expect to see more of?
So I think BERT is a very interesting, and I think BERT is one of the largest changes in search for many, many, many years. And I agree that in part that it's you cannot optimize for it in as much as it's not designed to change rankings. It is designed to understand the query better so that the systems that do change the rankings can know what to change the ranking towards. But I think BERT is a part of a system whereby Google is trying to really identify what people want, and that transcends the query. That goes throughout everything. What I think is really interesting is there's a stat that I read recently that 15% of searches are totally brand new. So globally, every day, 15% of searches are totally brand new. Which, if you think there's something like 5.6 billion searches a day, it puts it around 800 million searches that Google has never ever seen before. So yes, to the point around automating SEO and can you automate it, and what does this mean, and what does this mean in the context of BERT and everything. For me, I think it's not so much automation, but it is about data, and it is about pushing information out into sources where search engines can find it. Now, this is great because in local SEO, we've been doing this for ages. We've had a direct interface with Google's knowledge graph. We've had Google My Business. You put your name, address, phone number, opening hours, categories, et cetera, into Google My Business. Google has that information. And yes, they can corroborate it with online sources and they can check for consistency of data, but you are still pushing that directly into Google. Now what we're finding is with things like structured data and schema and particularly sites that are deploying schema markup en masse for lots of different things, they're able to push key information they want to be known for into the SERP, and that is what's now being surfaced when you look for these 15% of new queries, because some of them are incredibly long. Some of them are in ways that search engines have never been able to see before or understand before. BERT helps them do that, which is why I think this is a really big update. But actually, BERT is almost part of the larger trend towards this idea of entity-based search and things as opposed to keywords, or things as opposed to knowledge instead of documents, and that kind of thing. So as far as automation is concerned, I don't think we will automate, because there's going to be an element of, well, we still need to write content. We still need to know what we want to be found for, and we still want to know what we want to put out there. But we can start pushing to data feeds, and we can start presenting information in a way that makes sense to these systems that want to learn from us.
Yes, so it's a big deal. AI becoming more and more prevalent. Dan, can I go into you, because we've got a lot of questions coming from our audience, and we're not going to be able to ask them all. We've also got a lot of questions that have been submitted prior to, during the sign-up process. But Dan, just following on this topic about BERT, because, well, to say not just BERT, NLP, what about Hummingbird, any other RankBrain, all the AI type of things, right? Now, what about this theory or the concept that because of all of this, that it has now made it more important for perhaps more people to sit around and work for the manual review team? Is that a possibility that could be happening? And if that is the case, are we seeing manual penalties? Is this something you have experienced?
No, I don't think Google will ramp up their manual interventions anytime soon. That's definitely not going to happen. If anything, they're going to scale it down. First of all, it costs money to employ people, and algorithms can just do everything faster and better than humans. It's just a matter of getting it right. Google's not they're not new to machine learning, and they're just going to keep getting better and better. The amount of research that they pump out is staggering. I constantly monitoring it, and it's just wonderful. I'm personally not a big fan of what they've done with the recent just letting the unsupervised algorithms loose and guessing what the user wants. I really don't like that. I feel like I'm being forced in a certain search vector, and that if that doesn't suit me, it's hard to get out of it. I'm not kidding. I made a complaint to John Mueller on Twitter, a private message, about couldn't find good information about jelly. And I said, yeah, I'm searching for jelly. I was going to make some jelly for my daughter, and all I'm getting is stupid marmalade and jam and stuff. So it doesn't get it yet, right? For us, jelly is that gelatin stuff that but for other language groups, it's more like jelly, something like a jam.
So there's more learning to do, right?
As much as I hate it, personally, I think it benefits more users, and this is something that Ric was saying is actually not too bad in the UK. It's not too bad in Australia either. It's just that for advanced users, if you know what you're after and you're using advanced search queries, it's becoming less and less useful. I prefer Bing to Google now when I need to do my very complicated search queries.
Yeah.
But one thing you touched on that I think is quite significant. You mentioned automation. Google's automating, but are we? I think there's what we're going to see next year and moving forward every year more and more is we're going to see a lot more automation with content. Natural language generation is ripe. It's ready, and there are platforms out there that go beyond Quill and all the others that are very expensive and in enterprise level. So what we as SEOs can do and webmasters can do, we can start auto-generating content that's actually of good quality and driven by data. Obviously, it applies. Like if you work for a fintech client, that's going to be quite good and meaningful. But if you work for somebody in fashion, it's going to be maybe a little bit hard to do a computer-generated piece on, what you think about the summer dress. So it's not going to apply to every industry, but NLG is something to look out for. And if you're looking to automate, that's one thing. Another thing that's easily automated is outreach through social media ads. So basically buying the presence of your content. If content's good enough, it will earn its links. So some things that I'm doing on an automated level already, I've been doing it for a few years now, is automated link detection through analytics referrals. Since I'm earning my links, I'm not making them. So I like to know when they come. CTR experiments on an automated level as well. So basically, what happens is rather than testing your snippets, like you test it for a week and then you change the snippet and you test to see how it benchmarks against the previous period, I'm looking to create a system that will monitor a website for any changes in title and description and schema, and automatically start recording CTR differences and make sure that, so basically automatic detection and experiment running for a website. So this is an intelligent way for a system to come back to you and saying, hey, your CTR suddenly dropped or spiked. You did something good or bad. So systems alerting you to do something about it. Machines can't tell you what to do, but they can alert you that there's something interesting. And the next level we're planning to do after that is try to find patterns. So when something is consistently improving the CTR on your snippets, like presence of a $ or absence of it, that will be alerted to you as a webmaster. You'll be like, oh, okay, well, keep putting that symbol or that word more because it's improving your CTR. And one other thing that I'm doing already is automated event detection, whether it be on-site or global, and annotating it within your traffic timeline. So there's a lot that we can automate as SEOs, and you want to leave time for creative thought, and you can't do that if you're bogged down in manual work. So I'd like to encourage everyone to automate a lot more, so they can think creatively while machines are doing all the mundane work.
Yeah, that's I like that, Dan. It's very creative. So this is creative SEO, right?
Well, that's what when you get the machines to do all the legwork for you, you have time to breathe and think creatively. Creative ideas don't just come to you straight away. You need to ponder on it for a while. It's a bit of a wishy-washy topic, but when it comes to you, it tends to be fantastic when it's a good one. My success rate, I'd say, is 1 in 10. I'll make 10 attempts and 9 will fail, and I don't know why. But I'm pretty sure advertising industry is familiar with the concept.
Actually, if I can just add one more thought to that, because you brought up content. And of course, when I get asked about automation in SEO, I immediately think, oh, well, I don't personally know Python. But of course, like with like a lot of sites and a lot of enterprise sites, they make fantastic landing pages for things that they know that people are searching for, like with their products and things like that. But of course, they don't make great pages, or they don't have really good internal search for things that they haven't, created pages for. So, things like rule-based category pages are definitely something that a lot of people are looking into a lot more, to be able to capture that opportunity, especially at enterprise level. Because essentially what that does is, and this doesn't really apply for smaller sites, but for large sites, if you're say looking for like a specific like if there's like a trending keyword around like a product or something like that, then they might be able to like pull related products and things like that and serve genuine pages that might serve that particular intent when they're using like that kind of internal search. So there's definitely things that are live and things that people can use.
Look, I'll just as I said, we've only got an hour for our webinar, but we have a lot of questions coming. But I'll stay with you, Nick, because we've got a lot of questions submitted beforehand. But I'll just hone in on one from Monsi. Monsi's also from the UK, but she is asking, should we specifically optimize for voice search? Do you have any thoughts about that? Throwing you right in the deep end there on the spot.
Yeah.
Is it something, do we bother just specifically optimizing for voice, or are we doing it just as a part of our general strategy?
Look, I think even at the start of 2019, voice search was definitely something that a lot of people were focusing on, and still a lot of SEOs are still talking about voice search. I think that's definitely something that will be coming a lot more interesting of a space as natural language understanding is going to be working. And working through the SERPs and being tested and retested, and queries hopefully will be getting a little bit more qualified. But I think, like, as far as voice search for now, I mean, I like to use voice search all the time, but I still think that it's in its infancy. And for questions like, oh, can you please play this song, or can you please kind of like voice queries, they're still not well understood to be able to give you something that is deep and meaningful around your voice query. So I think that that's something that's definitely going to be worked towards. I think, again, with natural language understanding, or NLU, is happening. I think that is very much like going to be filling out a lot of the structured data that you add to your sites. So like if you're marking up your pages and you're going to be doing that, then that makes it statistically more likely that maybe an answer will be able to be read out, like with voice search, if you're marking up that data in that particular way. So I think that's something that's definitely going to be happening in the future. And I think even like with just Google Discovery, have you guys used Google Discovery much?
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Like, it'll say like if I'm going to Sydney, for instance, like, what kind of things are happening in Sydney, places to stay, things like restaurants to go and eat at. So I think there's a lot of really interesting things that are happening to try and like really map out that a lot more. So I just think that I think you should consider it, but I don't think it's going to be happening in the next few months. But I think that if that makes sense to your business, and it won't to every business, but if it makes sense for your business that your target audience maybe a little bit more adept at using voice search to make their queries, then I think that's something that you might consider, but for the future.
Rick, do you think this is the way we're heading? Maybe this feeds into the next question a little bit about technical SEO, and I mean, it's technical related, it's content related.
Sure.
How do we approach this?
So I think voice is particularly interesting. Think about a voice search, right? You ask your Alexa device, you ask your Google Home device a question. The first thing or the device does after it answers the question is turn around to you and say, hey, was that the right answer? Did I answer it correctly? Maybe it doesn't happen every time, but it happens a lot. Think of it this way: when Google or Alexa or Cortana asks you that question and you say yes or no, you've fundamentally changed the result for that query for yourself and for every other user moving forward, because that's another data point they can use in that system. So how do you optimize for voice search? Well, I say you can't. Like, for that specific query in that specific moment of time, because you are trying to optimize for a moving target, I don't think you can. But what you can do, and this is where I think it comes on to the point around technical SEO and content, is create a knowledge base that sits underneath it. So sure, you can't make sure that the answer that appears in that specific moment in time is the specific text that you want it to be. But actually what you can do is build a knowledge of information around it so that search engines can query that knowledge and pull back the right information that is relevant to you, or that you have that would be relevant to that user. So to the point around technical SEO, will content be king? It's something we saw. Gianluca Fiorelli talked about it back in 2016. In fact, he talked about it even earlier. This idea of search moving forward, and becoming all about topics and ideas and entities ultimately. And there's been some great people in the industry talking about it. Dawn Anderson, Bill Slawski, tons and tons of great people talking about entity-based search and information. I'm lucky enough that I get to work with Dwayne Forrester, who is phenomenal guy, and very, worked on some of the systems at Bing, and talking to him around how things, not necessarily in the context of Bing, just his ideas on how things work. Technical SEO, I think, is always going to have a place. Making sure your site is usable, making sure it's user-friendly, making sure that it can be found and understood by search engines, it's always going to be critically important, because if you can't be found, your information can't be distributed. If users have a terrible experience, they bounce, they don't want to convert. Will content be king? I think content will change from being about content in and of itself, so just having blocks of text that tell you things, to being split into two things. One, brand building. So content that drives people to be inspired, to be engaged, to want to enjoy your brand in the same way that a TV ad does or an out-of-home advert does. And I think the other side of it then is the information, the knowledge side of the content, which is then linked to structured data and to sort of links back into technical. That is a great recipe for optimizing for voice search. In fact, that's a great recipe for optimizing for search, full stop. So will technical continue to be important in 2020? Of course, it's fundamentally how search engines find your site and how users experience it. Will content be king? Yes, but I think the role that content will have will be very different to what it has been in the last couple of years.
Oh, that's a great way of blending those questions together, Rick. And I've just... I need to change this a little bit, because we're talking about content, and of course, part of what we want to do with our content is build the kind of content that's like a linkable asset, right? But we also know that perhaps spammy backlinks can hurt us. And Dan, I just don't know whether you have a few minutes to talk about. I'm sure people have heard of this, but some people might not have heard of it. What happened with your site where you old links came back to hurt you, right?
Yeah, it's something that nobody really believed in the industry anymore, because Google told us that. Well, no, let me backtrack a little bit. What Google loves us as an SEO industry to do is do technical SEO. Oh, so you have a client, oh, they really messed up, they put everything on no index, blocked by robots, all these things. That doesn't happen that often. Oh, the website's all JavaScript. Yeah, that's great. Most of my clients come to me and they say, we've done everything. There's this other guy that's just beating us. Why? Dan, we're out of options. What do we do next? So technical SEO, it goes to a certain point and then it's diminishing returns. It's like optimizing for W3C compliance. It's like, it's not going to do much. So once we go beyond technical SEO and we get into content, the problem with content is most people don't know how to write content for the web. They just get it the wrong way around, for the impatient reader, for the scanner. And that brings us to the point of links. It's not just links. You want to create to succeed 2020 onward. You need to create not just great content and great links and earn your links. You need to create overall brand buzz. Multiple channels, content, everything. You want to be notable. You want Google to think, oh, this website's hot. We want it in our search results. That's a whole new webinar. What makes a website hot? The visits, so don't have time for that. perhaps your question, I'm backtracking a lot, but your question was more specific.
You're giving some context, but specifically what I'm talking about is with links and the old links, or the kind of links that Google said they were going to ignore.
That's exactly right. So that brings us to the point. So when I realized that, oh, okay, I'm a brand now, I don't really need to build links because, I'm being mentioned in every important blog that there is in the industry. So I kind of gave up on any attempt to make a link. So for the last 5 years, I've been truly link earning. And I was so furious when Google decided to slap nothing less than an actual, like a pure spam type, like de-index the whole lot. Yeah. And I was in disbelief of all the targets in Australia. And Peter, you know how much spam there is, in people's link profiles in SEO industry. Of all the targets, they pick on me. Okay, I took that personally, and it was just like, why me? I haven't done anything in such a long time. So rolled up my sleeves, and within 24 hours, I actually detected some stuff with help of Christoph Semper. And we did his detox score was like all the way in the red, and I was like, nah, that's BS. He was counting no follow links and no index pages and all sorts of things. But he provided me some really crucial information. We had sponsored some events in the past that didn't have no follow applied. Maybe 10 such events. The irony of it is that the hypocrisy is that Google never puts no follow on their sponsored links, like when they sponsor a conference or something. And so the other part that I flagged in my reconsideration request was guest posts. So a guy that's not even working for me anymore did some guest posting in, 2009 and 10 and 2011. And that just flew out, I didn't even worry about it because I knew that Google was going to ignore it. That's what they told us that they would. And we had a lot of stuff in the disavow file, but those few slipped through. That was enough for otherwise pure organic link profile. It was enough for the website to be done. So that told us about the significance of links in Google's calculation of the ranking positions. It's still important because if it wasn't important, they wouldn't be issuing penalties, and that tells a lot.
I think your experience there, you've shared everything openly with the whole SEO community.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of lessons for all of us, really sort of open our eyes to perhaps some of the things that we maybe took for granted. So let me just, we're out of time, but I'll just go around to each guest one more time. And I just want to ask, what are your final thoughts about, what's your SEO prediction for 2020? What do you think is going to happen, Nick? What should we be thinking about for 2020?
I think I'm just going to keep it really, really simple and just kind of boil it down to three things. Those three things being content, make sure that you're writing really, really good content, use thinking about EAT, expertise, authority, and trust, and quality. Use heading tags and use structured data because of NLU. It's going to be understanding a lot more in conjunction with your structured data to be able to fill out your that knowledge graph. I think links are still important. Based on what I was saying with the link graph, still having some reliance. And I also think that, content, links, and oh my gosh, I just had a brain fart, but
user experience.
Yeah, user experience is definitely super, super important. Yes.
Well, thank you, Nick, and thanks for joining us. How do people stay in contact with you? Follow your Twitter. What's your best channel?
Yep, you can tweet at me at @NickRangerSEO, or you can find me at studiohawk.com.au.
Thanks for
or
your
on
insights.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, great. So, Rick, what should we expect in 2020? What's your final thoughts here?
So I think 2020 will be a continuation of the trend that we've already seen. I think users will get better used to searching for things in more complex ways and the way they ask voice devices and other things, I think Google will get better at understanding what people are looking for and create new formats and new interesting ways to present information in the search and so in search results. So for me, I think 2020 is the year that everyone needs to get behind building knowledge, building data, building information that it sits in Google's knowledge graph, and making sure that they're answering the customer questions as opposed to someone else. But I actually want to think about something else here, because and it's something perhaps it's a whole nother topic for another webinar. But I actually think 2020 is going to be the year that we start focusing on things like site search as well. If users are fighting, or if we're fighting hard to get users to come to our website, and users are expecting certain types of experiences because they're used to seeing it in Google, in Bing, etc. Most websites right now, they don't offer that type of experience. And actually, if websites were to start offering that Google-like, Bing-like, search engine-like experience on their own site, would users bounce? Would users look in the search results for them, or would they start to go to the brands direct? And I think that's something we'll start to see a little bit more of in 2020.
Wow. And of course, this webinar is about SEO predictions for 2020. This is the Australian version, but you actually have one coming up in January. You're going to be involved in with Jerry White with Take It Offline events. And so I wish you all the best for that. And I hope that's just as insightful for all you guys in UK.
Very much looking forward to it. And I remember seeing you lead last year's event, and it was pretty spectacular. So really looking forward to this one.
Wow, that's great. So Dan, what's your, you have the last say today. What's the verdict for 2020 predictions?
I'm going to make one simple, clean prediction. Google's going to start deep indexing video content and audio content on the web. You'll be able to search for the very specific point within the video by using a normal query. For example, you're going to type in a sentence that appears within this webinar, and you're just going to find this video in the results and go straight to that point where we say that thing. That's going to happen in 2020.
Very specific.
Here we go. That's the final verdict. But look, we're running out of time. We're over time. We could keep going and we could make predictions all night, all day. I can see the sun's coming up behind Rick in the UK, but the sun is going to go down here at some stage. And so thanks once again. Of course, thanks to all of our viewers. We didn't get a chance to answer all of your questions, and perhaps we'll keep that conversation going. Thanks for everyone who submitted questions. And thanks to Semrush for making this platform available for us to share our ideas. And we will we'll catch up with all of you very soon, and most likely see you in 2020. Bye for now.
See you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.